Hello everybody! Today I'm going to show you how you can turn a big thrifted shirt into this off-shoulder ruffle dress. That's today on Refashioning with Rachel. First, you're going to want to cut the sleeves off of the shirt. And for reference, this shirt is an extra large and I am a size 4. After you have removed the sleeves, fold up the collar and draw in a straight line right underneath the collar and cut off the top of the shirt. Then measure down 5 inches from the top of the armhole and make a mark, and draw a straight line from that mark to the bottom of the shirt. And then cut along the armholes up to the point where you made the mark, and then cut along that straight line that you drew. And cut in a little notch on both layers of fabric where you made the mark so that we can see it later. Then, with right sides together, pin all along the side seams of the dress. And then sew the side seams, stopping at the point where you made the notch. Make sure that the hems are perfectly lined up before you start sewing. That way we can just reuse the hem that's already in the bottom of the shirt. And be sure to stop the stitch when you get to the point where we cut the notch in earlier. And do the same thing on the other side. Throughout this project, I used a serger to finish my seams, but you can use a zigzag stitch if you don't have a serger. Or you could even leave them unfinished, no one's going to know. And then iron the seams flat, and this is a good time to give the whole dress an iron. Fold over the raw edges of the armhole just a little bit and iron it down. And make a stitch close to the folded edge, sewing as close as you can get to the side seam. Then fold down the top of the dress about 1/4 inch and pin it in place. And sew that down. And do the same thing on the back of the dress. Now moving on to the sleeves. Remove the cuffs and cut open the sleeves, and cut 2 notches in the middle of the sleeves and then open them up. Using the notches you made earlier, draw a line down the center of the sleeve, and then measure out 2 more lines as wide as you can from that center line. So for me, that was about 5.5 inches. but for you, it will just depend on how wide the sleeves of your shirt are. And then cut along those lines to make 4 strips. And cut off the ends of the strips in straight lines. Then pin together the ends of these strips to make one big loop. To salvage as much of the fabric as possible, I cut some of these ends at an angle. So when I pin them together, I slightly offset the corners so that the fabric is aligned where the stitching line will be. But if that is too confusing, you can just cut off all the ends of the strips at 90-degree angles and attach them normally. And once the strips are all pinned together, take it to the sewing machine and sew them in place. So here you can see that where my stitching line is going to be, the strips of fabric are lined up. And so this way, when I unfold it, it is in a nice straight line. This loop is going to be the ruffle of the dress. And then give this big loop of fabric a nice ironing. Then, on the wrong side of the fabric, measure and make a mark a ½ inch from the raw edge, and then another mark 1.5 inches past that mark. And then fold over and iron the raw edges to each of those marks, all around the whole ruffle. Then sew down this part that you just folded, making sure to leave about a 1-inch gap. And make the stitch close to the fold. Then hem the other side of the ruffle, simply by folding over the raw edge twice, just a little bit, and securing with a stitch. Try to make this hem as narrow as possible so that the ruffle can be as wide as possible. Then you're going to cut a length of elastic that fits comfortably but securely around your shoulders, plus ½ inch for seam allowance. Then, using a safety pin, feed the elastic through the casing you made on the ruffle. Be careful at this step not to twist the elastic. Then sew together the ends of the elastic. And stretch out the ruffle so the elastic goes entirely inside the casing. And stitch closed the gap that you left in the elastic casing. Then pull on the ruffle in many different directions so the elastic gets evenly distributed. Then try on the ruffle inside out over a tank top and make a mark where the ends of the tank top meet the ruffle. And be sure to try on the ruffle inside out for this step so that when you make the marks, they are on the wrong side. And then line up the top of the dress with the marks that you just made, and pin the right side of the dress to the wrong side of the ruffle. And stretch out the ruffle to see where it lines up with the dress, and add a few more pins. And do this on the back of the dress as well. And then stitch the dress to the ruffle. As you're sewing, stretch out the ruffle and try to make the stitch directly on top of the stitch that you made when you made the elastic casing. It would definitely help to use matching thread for this step, but I didn't have any, and I wanted you to see what I was doing. And here's a closer view of me sewing the back of the dress to the ruffle. Lastly, we want to make a tie to cinch in this dress. So with all of the leftover scraps of fabric, cut out a bunch of 1.5 inch wide strips of fabric until you have enough little strips to make one long strip about twice as long as your waist. And sew them together end to end. Iron open the seams. And fold the strip in half with right sides together and make a stitch about 1/2 inch away from the folded edge. All the way down the strip. Then turn this tube of fabric right side out. I'm using this little tool, but you could also use an embroidery needle with some thick thread if you don't have this tool. And then to finish off the ends of this tie, simply make a knot and trim off the raw edge. And then this project is finished. So here's a reminder of how it looked before. And here's how it looks now. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and check out some of my other refashioning videos, and have a beautiful day.